Welcome to the Handyman Zone. Today, trimming doors. I will be using voiceover in today's video. This video is only going to address trimming the top and bottom of doors. We're not going to address shaving the sides of the doors or planing the door. So this would be for if you had carpeting or a new floor installed and your doors were too long, or if you had settling or out of square issues with a door frame and the top didn't fit, or if you're putting in new doors and you have to cut them to size. That's what we're going to be addressing in today's video. We'll be using a circular saw. You would want to be very careful with a power tool such as this. It's very powerful, it's very sharp, and can easily slice multiple fingers off in a split second. So always watch that free hand. Always make sure you know where that free hand and where those unoccupied fingers are. You don't want them anywhere near the piece you're cutting or the blade. And the techniques you'll be watching today would be for solid wood, Luan, hollow core, basically any kind of wooden door. Although if you were cutting a hollow door and you cut through to the hollowness of it, you would have to fabricate a spacer and glue it in there to give the door its strength back, but we'll address that in another video. Here I'm checking the blade for square and adjusting as needed. And here we're checking the blade depth. We want about a 1/4 inch showing at the bottom of the door. This is to reduce kickback and yet let the wood chips an area to escape. So you want about a 1/4 inch showing. Now in this clip we're actually making the cut. And like I said, watch your free hand. Watch where your fingers are. In this case, there was bad lighting conditions in this room, so I was actually holding a flashlight, so I knew exactly where my free hand was. But if you start your cut straight, you'll finish your cut straight. So take that extra second to make sure that your saw and your blade and your line that you're cutting on are all oriented square and straight. And when you start your cut, just follow through, and you won't have to make any corrections. You'll just go straight through. If you start crooked, you're really going to be in trouble. So it's important thing is to just really start that straight cut with the blade perpendicular to your cut and just follow through with it. And as you see here, the cut is done. We're looking at the straightness of it right now and double checking. And also like to say that making a series of small cuts, a series of 1/4 inch cuts would be much more beneficial than just making like one cut that was too big and leaving a big gap under the door. These 3 pieces of wood are the 3 cuts I made on that door. Kind of snuck up on it with the one on the left and then the middle, and then the last one on the right was just to shave off, just to get the perfect amount. You don't want a big gap, and yet you want clearance. And seeing that all your tools are out already and you're all set up to do this, it just makes sense to sneak up on it with a bunch of small cuts instead of one big cut where you're going to have a big gap and it's going to look bad. So make a note of that and make small cuts rather than big cuts. There's no real way to measure this stuff before you start and know exactly how much you have to take off. It's really trial and error. So make your small thin cuts. Taking off like a paint stick, like 1/8 of an inch, 3/16, maybe a 1/4 inch at most. Okay, so this door is cut and we're checking it now. And again, this is after 3 cuts. We got the perfect, very small gap at the bottom. And yet there's no interference with the carpet at any area of the door swing. It's clear all the way, so we won't get any marks down the road in the carpet from the door swinging. We're just finishing up here with the mallet and tapping our hinge pins in. If you wanted, you could put like a drop oil. You don't want to put a lot of oil because it'll just drip on the carpet, but maybe just rub it with the oil or something like that. We're moving on to the second door at this point. You see I have a drop cloth, I have my circular saw, drop cloth on the bed, drop cloth on the floor, extension cord. We got a straight edge. You're going to need some kind of straight edge. Whether it's a ruler or a carpenter's square really comes in handy because you saw we used it to check the saw and we used it to mark the door. Those are to pull the hinge pins out, the screwdriver, the mallet, and the center punch. The masking tape, you could cover the shoe of your saw. Some saws tend to leave a mark on finished surfaces, and you could, in fact, cover the shoe with masking tape to protect your painted door. So what are we doing here? We're marking the next door with the carpenter's square, and then we're moving it over because it's not long enough for the width of the door. So we originally mark it and then extend it. There's the pencil mark. Okay, now this is the first cut on this second door. And again, you want to start your cut straight. So you see me orienting the saw carefully to make sure that I start the plunge nice and straight. And that way I can just follow through with it. There's no corrections or very minor corrections. We're going to end up with a nice straight cut. It's really like a one-time deal here. So if you really screw it up with a crooked cut, I mean, there's really, dependent if you cut it crooked the wrong way, there's no fixing it. You're just going to have a crooked door. You can't make it longer. I mean, I guess you could glue it back on and, I don't know, you probably could glue it back on and recut it, but then you're talking like a multiple day project there. So there's the piece we just cut off. That's probably about 3/16 of an inch plus the width of the saw blade, which they call the kerf, would probably make that like a 1/4 inch cut we just took off. And I'm going to show you the comparative straightness of the cut with the straight edge of the carpenter's square. Very nice job, if I do say so myself. That's the kerf, the width of the saw blade they call the kerf, and that's also has to be accounted for in your cuts. That wood disappears, and it's usually 1/8 of an inch. Most of those saw blades are 1/8 of an inch, so you got to account for that in your measurements. Now we're putting the door back on. Always start with the top hinge and then put the pin in the bottom hinge. When you're taking the doors off, you always take the bottom pin out first, then the top pin. It's just a matter of balance and handling the door. There we go. That's the bottom hinge. So we put the pins in halfway. And then we check the opening and closing of the door. And once we know that everything is good, then we can tap the pins in with the mallet. Although now I have realized that this door also has an issue at the top where the door frame is not square. And the door hits right where that paint was missing, keeping the door from closing all the way. So we took it back off. Now we're going to have to make not a crooked cut, but an off-angle cut to account for the outer square door. So although I'm going to keep the line straight, it's not going to be a square cut. And here I'm holding the carpenter's square up to the door frame to check how out of square it is. And you can see it's touching there, and yet at the other end is like a 1/4 inch gap. So I'm going to take that orientation in my head and put the angle on my door, mark that, and then we're going to cut. And again, sneaking up on it is better than doing it in one cut. I believe I made 2 cuts for that top to make it as you see in the video here. So again, sneaking up on it with 2 or 3 or 4 little cuts is better than just right away trying to make one big cut and solving a problem, especially like this off-angle cut on a nice door like this would be like, and the doors are all matching too, so like if you screw up the door, you're really screwing up the whole second floor of the house. To find an oak door like this, basically impossible. So really got to be careful. So all right, so we're putting in the pins and we're going to check and perfect. But again, this is 2 cuts to do this top. Okay, so there's the top. Perfect. Okay. And the bottom. Okay. Okay, so so there you have it, boys and girls. Just make sure your saw is, double check your settings as far as depth and the angle. Watch your fingers, wear safety glasses. Use a carpenter's square. Always make straight lines, always cut straight lines, even if they're like this required. And you can actually see it here. as it gets fatter. Even though this required an angle cut, we still kept a straight line. It just looks a lot more professional than just going freehand with a circular saw. It's horrible. And remember about your kerf, and that's it. And if you got to make 2 or 3 cuts on a door, you got to do it, you know. It's just the way it is, step by step. You don't want to like take off too much, then you got a big gap under the door, especially something like a bathroom door. A lot of noise is going to come out of there. Hot air, cold air, breezes, drafts, stuff like that. So you want to keep it to minimum. So I like to go eyeball it and then just sneak up on the right depth rather than just take a big cut and 3/4 of an inch and say, and then you have a 1/2 an inch gap at the bottom. Bathroom noises come out and stuff. So I'd rather go with 3/4 inch cuts than 1 3/4 inch cut. But that's just a couple of tips from good old Dino here. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Give a thumbs up if I helped you. Sub while you're here, because this is the Handyman channel. You know you're going to need me in the future. And feel free to leave a comment. And remember, the other users look at your comments, so if you have a question or a comment, you may indeed help other people down the road. So use the comment box.